I made an alteration in my bed. I took away the grounding sheet and I replaced it with a normal sheet. And it's still a grid of silver wires underneath this sheet, which are embedded in the mattress because this is an earthing bed. So I'm trying to minimize the effect of shorting out that occurs between the feet and the head of Dr. Becker's healing circuit that I use at night when I sleep. I have the earthing pillowcase grounded to the earth, and then it connects via a wire to the positive of a voltage divider circuit, and then the negative goes to the mini earthing pad at my feet. And the voltage divider circuit is merely a AA battery and two resistors, a 10 mega ohm resistor and a 1 kilo ohm resistor, which puts out somewhere in the vicinity of 150 microvolts and 150 nanoamps when not under load, when the body's not connected to it. But once the body's connected to it, the values drop considerably more than that. Negative to the feet, positive to the head, and one or the other, the head or the feet, to ground. Now, it's true I have another circuit connected in line with the grounding wire, which is very unique. But I'm focusing right here on this video with the Becker's circuit, because what I noticed upon awakening is that when I used the circuit yesterday on my forearm to heal my sprained carpal tunnel, it did a lot of good. It healed it to a large degree. It still hurts a little. It's a little stiff, but it's only if I flex it, you know. But it healed it to a large degree, and I noticed that when I'm not in the circuit, see, because I have a condition which psychiatry likes to call with fancy terms, but in Ayurveda it's very simple. It's vata imbalance, you know. It's just too much vata, too much air, and too much wind. I notice I abuse myself and other people by working my mind too hard, which drags my body along and works my body too hard too when I do mental work. But if I talk, I overdo it. I talk too much, and I blather people to the point where they feel like they've been abused. And when I'm under the influence of the circuit, though, on my forearm, it doesn't matter, just a portion of the body. It affects the bloodstream. It alters my psychology to such a degree that I don't feel like overdoing activity. And instead, I take it easy. I do a little bit of activity and a lot of rest because, you know, that was what my body needed yesterday. And when I'm at night sleeping, I don't mind what impact it has on me, because I have this habit pattern of expecting to drive myself in activity. And it's not an easy habit to break. I got into it as a child by becoming a vegetarian, and I was a vegan for so long, 35 years. Now at least I allow myself to eat eggs and dairy, and once in a great while a little piece of fish, but it doesn't do a whole lot of good to ground me. You know, they say among meditators, oh, you know, eat some meat or something. It's, you know, short-lived, just like this circuit. It's short-lived. But I can't keep that up. I can't keep eating fish. It doesn't work. But the circuit, that's interesting. I do it every night, okay, but I don't do it in the daytime unless there's a reason to, like I'm trying to heal an injury. But I wonder if, you know, it's kind of ridiculous to be obsessive, obviously, to, you know, walk around with a circuit all day long and then be hooked up to it at night. But it works better than taking medication. It actually works. It seems to induce a balancing of the doshas, putting them all into balance. Now, I'm a little embarrassed that I gave Faith Ahura advice by way of comments on a particular video. I don't remember which one. It's on my Vinyasi channel, in which I was trying to discourage her from using this circuit. And it was predicated on the experience of another circuit in which the voltage was too high and the amperage was too low. And Becker said, it's a window. He says it in the book, The Body Electric. It's a window. Too much, no good. Too little, doesn't do any good at all. And although, well, and it has to do with both factors, both the amperage and the voltage. And I kind of forgot that over time when I started monkeying with, oh, well, maybe another circuit is better. And I think what was happening is similar to the biocircuit. You know, Leon Ernest Damon said if you do a biocircuit in relaxation mode for too long, it flips into the opposite and becomes tension mode. And that must have been what I was experiencing, except in Becker's case, it's a different circuit. And the problem is you can't just flip it, the polarity, because I was trying that and it wasn't working. You simply have to stop using it and give yourself breaks. And so that's why I developed the theory not to use it in the daytime at all, just use it at night during sleep. And then I'd give myself sufficient breaks, and I'd come to appreciate it and not feel like I was overindulging. But there's really a different criteria, and that is, well, how am I doing on my doshas? Are my doshas balanced? Particularly Vata. Is my Vata dosha imbalanced? And am I taking it easy? Am I not straining? Am I not pursuing too much activity? So that would be the criteria to understand how much is too much. And apparently sleeping at night is not too much, and it's still under value. But how do I know to take it further? Because apparently when I do it at night, it's not enough to have any impact of lasting value during the daytime to keep me calm and a bit subdued so I don't overdo activity and strain. I haven't been considering that factor, and I don't know how much more it would take. But I'm considering making either another circuit or just take this out of the bed circuit and put it on during the daytime. I realize now, for certain lengths of time, until such time as my Vata dosha comes back in line with my other two doshas, my Pitta and my Kapha. Now I noticed that I'm going to have to make a different circuit that's based on cloth, not based on cardboard. Because, let me take this one out. So, what I discovered in the past was you can't put a masking tape against the body, and this is not the gluey side, against the body, because eventually the glue comes through. The sweat of the body seems to leach out the glue, and it starts sticking, and it becoming so adherent to the skin that if you leave it on for several days and not try to remove it at all from that place, try to remove it and you end up taking your skin with you, and it's very hard to remove the masking tape without removing your skin as well. So, this says 10 megaohms and 1 kiloohm. So it's putting out somewhere around 150 microvolts and 140 nanoamps. If you test it not under load, you know, there's nothing else connected to your leads except your probe of your measuring tool, a device, your multimeter. Because I don't know what the measurements are with the body. All I know is I tested them by experience, testing different values of a voltage divider circuit. And the experience told me this is the window. And it just happens to be the window of amperage that Becker recommends. And the voltage, but he wasn't too explicit in the window of voltage. He just said keep it under a volt, but, you know, how much under, you know? So I had a monkey with this to find out, and I had to use a voltage divider circuit to reduce the voltage to find out. I couldn't just use a single resistor. I had to use two in parallel between the supply and the output, between the battery and the output, and then discard the larger of the two voltages, the 10 megaohm, and use only the smaller of the two, the 1 kiloohm, to help, you know, get the voltage reduced. So what I'm going to have to do is, the resistors are in here. Just 2 resistors. It doesn't really take up this much space. So I'm going to have to find some way to build it so that it's uses a piece of cloth as its substrate. And so I learned to put this inside of a sock to keep my body shielded from the masking tape. But actually what I should be doing is simply not using any masking tape, nor any cardboard, and just sew the resistors and the battery holder in place to a piece of cloth so that the whole apparatus is flexible except for maybe the battery. And then the harness, which was a Velcro strap, can be attached, sewn into the sock. But that's something to do. I only if I wear this all day long as well as what I use at night, I'll definitely not overwork myself. So it'll take a while before I get around to doing it. But I think that's my next project, is to make a cloth-based rather than cardboard and masking tape. Cloth and sewing thread based, or fishing line. I'm not sure which. No, I can use just stitch over several times, a circular stitch to hold various parts in place, like a resistor or a piece of wire in place to the piece of cloth that I'm adhering to. I could probably use several layers of cloth as my base, and then a single layer to go over the top. Now, one of these circuits, the battery takes forever to drain down, so you don't have to worry about changing it or saving the battery, because, 10 megohms, 150 nanoamps, that's like, good grief, it's like hardly any drain on the battery. It does drain in time, it slowly but surely, but it takes a few years. Oh, whatever. Several months, I don't know exactly how much. So that's what I wanted to tell you. It balances the doshas, and it's short-lived because it only lasts as long as you're in the circuit. The minute you're out of the circuit, you bounce back to your whatever is your former state. But I think what matters is how much time you stay in the circuit will determine how long it lasts afterwards. And that's what I want to determine, is how much time at each 24-hour cycle should I stay in the circuit? Should it be all the time? And how many days do I have to do that to catch up? Because I haven't used this circuit in a long time because of using the wrong circuit, the wrong values. I lost interest in pursuing this, in utilizing this, and it's a shame. But there is this factor of moderation in both the construction of the circuit, controlling the output, but also moderation in how many hours in a day we use it. I have to be considerate of that. And then I guess it's a very reasonable tool to use. But it certainly can't hurt, It's just, this is a psychological thing that I'm talking about, not so much. I'm sure there's a physiological component, obviously, but in terms of our appearance, in terms of our diagnosis upon ourselves, our self-diagnosis, how would you go about knowing, Well, my subtle intuition told me how to construct the circuit, but it was my use of the circuit that I didn't understand. Does have to be in moderation, and that moderate value varies over time. It's not the same every day. I doubt there's a fixed amount of time that would be true per day. I think it simply varies based on whether or not you've been using it at all, yada yada, and this, that, and the other thing. I think it's a highly variable factor, this idea of moderation, when it comes to the impact this energy has on the body. And there's also the value of moving it around. See, I was merely applying it to the feet and to the head all the time, thinking that's the only way to use it, forgetting, well, no, originally it was used for wounds. It was used on specific quadrants of the body, limited area. And here I am thinking, forgetting that and thinking, oh no, the only way for me to use it when I don't have a wound is to use it on the whole body, but that's not true. You can move it around, and that's what a different wound in a different place of the body taught me, was that it's different when you apply it to a limited section of the body and move it around. One day maybe have it here, another day have it over here. It's not immoderate. It's not abusive, overindulgent, too much use of it. And so this is a way to become moderate in its use, is to not use it on the whole body 24/7, but maybe use it on the whole body at night, and then use it in the daytime on a specific body part, and move it around from one day to the next. And that kind of variety is sufficient moderation to still get the benefit of balancing the doshas and not be immoderate. So I may end up using it, every day, all day long, Just move it around. Now you'll have to get a feel for where to put the negative and where to put the positive. Basically, the tissue near the negative output lead, which in this, I always try to color code it, using either red for positive or black for negative or both. And then I have my alternates. I tend to use like yellow, any kind of color for the positive, and white for the negative, usually. Sometimes I'll use green for the negative. So the tissue nearest the output of the positive is where your circuit starts to experience resistance right away at the outputs, at the contact points, which in this case is over here because it's by way of extension. So the area, the flesh that's in the immediate vicinity of because the wire has no resistance, so the flesh in the immediate vicinity of the contact point for that particular lead is what's considered the area of, in this case, the positive. And so what Becker did, he always put negative near the wound that he's trying to regenerate, and the positive was merely his reference on the opposite side of the body. So you try to use that kind of thinking, like, what if I'm moving it around, what area of the body needs to heal? So you put your negative near the wound, but on the side opposite where you're going to put the positive so that the current can go through the wound, obviously. But you put your negative nearby, closest to it, so the intensity of the negative charge is the greatest, because it seems to dissipate. Well, no, it does. It's a gradient. It becomes less negative and more positive as you move along until you get to your positive reference lead coming from your circuit attached here. Here it's the greatest positivity, and at the other lead, the negative lead, it's going to be the greatest negativity. And so your wound is going to be in between the two leads, but closest to the negative for healing to occur. Now, if you're trying to close a wound that's already healed, it's open and abscessing or whatever, then you use the positive. Or if you have cancer, you use the positive, because that has to do with shutting down regeneration that's gone awry, that's functioning without limits. The body doesn't seem to know to shut up, like me, shut down or shut up, because silence is golden. And regeneration, such as cancer, is activity that's gone on too long. So that's interesting, that I've found always the greatest benefit in putting the positive lead to my head, to shut down my brain. Because my brain gets so active with ideas, so inspired, that I screw myself, literally, by driving myself with so much enthusiasm that I look for activity to express that enthusiastic feeling that goes along, my reaction too, that goes along with the quality of inspired thinking. That is, the core of my problem. It's a benefit, but it can be a curse too. Simply through overindulgence. So I'm going to connect the circuit today to some body part. I'll just pick one body area and walk around with it and see, as a way of life of attaching the circuit to the body and moving it around from one day to the next, where to put it and how to orient the leads, to see if that doesn't help balance my doshas. Because upon awakening, I realized the utter calmness and the clarity and just the total balance that I felt. You know, something, hopefully I'll stop talking, but with a closing thought, the analogy I recall was my experience of an MRI device session. I went for an MRI, and that's where they put your head inside a magnetic field that's very strong. It's very costly. And afterwards, for 24 hours, I felt totally natural. It was hard for me to put words to it, but I felt myself. I felt like I was myself, and I was not myself. For the first time in my life. And so it proved to me that the medical establishment makes a choice that is very not in our favor to use MRI devices strictly for diagnosis and never for therapy, when in reality pulsed magnetic therapy is very useful, especially when the pulses are very high. Diapulse.net, I want to say, or .com. They are permitted to use their device in hospitals, but who knows about it, you know? And who has Medicare Part B to pay for it? Or insurance. Otherwise, it's out of your pocket and it's very expensive. But if you're quadriplegic, they can heal your spinal injury and bring it back to life. You can get out of your wheelchair and start walking again. Yet, how many people know about this? It's high frequency, somewhere in the 1,000 range, I want to say, of cycles per second, in which they pulse the magnetic field coming out of their device and to irradiate the body or the section that they're trying to treat, such as the spinal cord, because they found it was very advantageous for spinal cord victims to undergo that therapy because it stimulated regeneration. Well, magnetic fields, it's known that magnetic field will induce a current in another conductive object. And the body is a semiconductor, Becker realized. It's not a conductor, it's not an electrolytic bath of fluid, it's a semiconductor. And it can change its conductivity at will, due to stress, for instance. So here, in this situation, I'm applying very weak electricity to the body directly, which is equivalent to what a very strong pulsed magnetic field will do. So what happens with a pulsed magnetic field is that when the pulse starts, you get a surge of current in the flesh being stimulated. And then when the pulse ends, it collapses, and you get a current flow in the opposite direction. And so it's when the pulse rises and falls that you get your surge of current. And that's why pulsing has some advantages over continuity of current, especially when you're inducing it remotely from a source not directly connected to the body. So pulse magnetics is very interesting, especially, and pulse DC is relatively safe. Pulse AC just screws up the system big time. And using pulse AC is a mistake, literally a waste of time, because there's no good in it. But when you use pulse DC, it's not bad when it's magnetic. And when it's continuous DC, it becomes advantageous applied to the body directly, because then it's no stress when the voltage and the amperage are within the confined windows that Becker had discovered. And this circuit manages to deliver like no other. But with moderate use, namely moving it around, not moving the contacts around, let's put it that way, moving the flow of current around, and moving around the voltage orientation so that the body has a chance to be stimulated by that variety, rather than be burdened and react with tension, which indicates it's time to move the contacts around. So I think literally, potentially, this circuit could be on the body all the time. All you have to do is move the contacts around. Not merely flip polarity, but more importantly, move them around. Move the positive around, move the negative around, and never have them in the same place. So it's not enough to merely flip the polarity, because then you still have the contact zone in the same area of the body, and that area of the body is getting tired of that intensity in the vicinity of that lead making contact with the skin, because everything in between is going to be less pronouncedly positive or negative. It's going to be somewhere in between the two extremes, and it's not going to care. It's not being stressed. It's the two contact areas that are being stressed, the feet and the head, for instance, if you only used feet and head contact all the time. But it's moving the contact areas of the body around, which gives that area of the body rest and induces a kind of stress to that area of the body that the contact is making the lead from the circuit is making contact with. So that's the caveat. It's a drawback in the course of wanting to get the benefit of the circuit, is that the placement of the electrode stresses that body and that area of the body. And in an extreme case, Colley and Lyman, over at educate-yourself.org/B as in blood and E as in electrification, or B as in buoyant and E as in energy. But it stands for blood electrification, and it's about Colley and Lyman. And they literally had to move the two electrodes around because they were needles inserted in the body. And it cauterized the flesh after about a month's time. Now those articles at that web folder, web directory on that website doesn't specify what the voltage and amperage was used. It just said weak DC. It could be pulsed or could be continuous use. So I've never experienced cauterization. I just experienced stress, which is known as tension, which Leon Ernest Demon defined using the word tension, a tension circuit, tension-oriented circuit with his biocircuits in his book Cooperative Healing. So cauterization is a form of severe stress, obviously. But that principle of moving the leads around, I didn't realize, is really all that's needed. Because you could have the circuit on your body all the time and get rid of HIV retrovirus after 5 months, because it merely assists the body by arresting the ability of the retrovirus to replicate, and then slowly, gradually, over 5 months' time, your body kills off all retrovirus organelles that are floating around in your body, because they don't have a chance to replicate and magnify their population, and so very gradually the immune system kills them off. So I'm thinking that's what drives my Vata imbalance, and I've kind of always suspected this. I just didn't know how to get around the problem of how do you use the circuit all the time and not flip into tension mode. And I thought all you do is reverse polarity, but I didn't realize when you pass the current through your body, you have a gradient, a voltage gradient, along the current path, the path that the amperage takes through your body. And it's the flesh in the area of the contact point that suffers the most amount of stress, but also everything along the line, because they get this orientation of current flow that's going a certain direction. So I thought, flipping polarity might change something, and it does, but it doesn't change enough. You really have to change the location of the contact point itself and move that around, both of them. Well, at least one of them, but I think ideally both, to get the maximum benefit of a variety to impart to the physiology. So I'll leave you with that. Well, today I'm putting my circuit attached to my neck, is the negative, and my ears are the positive. I'm using an earmuffs that wrap around the back of the neck and go to each ear, and I put a semiconductive electron patch used for like TENS machines on the underside for each ear, and then I put an earthing patch on the outside to make direct connection with the wire, and a Dritz female number 3 nickel-plated brass fastener to hook the wire to that. And I ran the wire to the back, and it has a junction in the middle. I exposed the insulation and attached another Dritz with a piece of silver wire for this strap to connect to, because the strap is a grounding strap, very long. It has a buckle at one end, a cinch buckle, and an alligator clip at the other end. And so if you're a computer technician, you would put this around your wrist, let's say, and then attach this to your table. There's usually a grounding point at the side of the table where you can attach your grounding strip to keep yourself grounded, so you don't fry the motherboard when you work on repairing somebody's computer. So this comes from Statico, and it's disposable, model number S1, followed by what looks like 4 zeros. D as in dog, F as in February. And that's how you use it on your... Oh, I see. You attach the alligator clip to the frame of the computer, so you have the same voltage as the computer frame. So when you touch electrical component circuit boards, you have no static discharge between your hand and the board because you're both the same voltage. So I use it as a earthing device rather than a wristband, which is very narrow just for your wrist. I want to put this around my neck. So the underside of this is conductive cloth, and the top side is magenta cloth. So you put the conductive side against the skin of your neck. In my case, I put it around my neck. As for my negative lead, connected to here, and then the circuit, and the positive goes to the earmuffs, and then the circuit I put underneath a ski cap to hold it in place, and stuff the wires up the backside. So I only have one wire dangling back here, but most everything is up there. And I can walk around and have it attached, this to my neck, and the other lead goes to my ears, to focus just on the head area of my body. So that's one way to do that, is to move things around, is to use different grounding straps that computer technicians use. You can find them in electronic stores sometimes. So this is Statico.